Afternoon, everyone. So my name is Desiree Lopez. I'm the Managing Director of TNS BMRB. And by way of introduction, really, we are the largest social research agency providing evidence to government departments, to commercial organizations, and to policymakers more widely in a whole host of ways. So everything from collecting national statistics, to engaging in public engagement work, to doing political polling, and also doing behavioral insight. And I mention that in part because some of the evidence I want to talk and bring to you today actually comes from a variety of those studies. What I want to do is three main things. Tell you a little bit about what we've learned from opinion polls around which environmental issues are key to the public. Talk a little bit about the challenge in relation to looking at opinions and action, and what that means as people get ready to go out and vote. And finally, to talk a little bit about what we've learned from our behavioral insight studies, which actually looks at the gap between what people tell us is important and what they actually end up doing, and what that may mean then as we get people ready to go out and vote in the next election. So the first set of data actually comes from work that we do for the Eurobarometer studies that helps to inform decision making both at the European Commission and European Parliament level. It's a fairly large study, 30,000 face-to-face interviews across 28 member states. And we ran a study specifically to talk to citizens around what environmental issues are most concerned to them. We ran the study in 2011 and also in 2014. And so the next few slides gives an overview of the data from this study. The top 5 environmental issues in terms of citizens across the UK, well, the top is actually air pollution, followed by water pollution and then growing waste, chemicals on health issues, and the depletion of natural resources. And if we look at the UK data specifically, they're the same top 5, with the percentages changing slightly. When we asked specifically about how important the environment is, and this is data specifically for the UK, 94% of citizens saying that protecting the environment is important, and 78% saying that they agree environmental issues directly impact their daily life. And this has increased 9 percentage points since the 2011 survey. We asked also about to what extent particular factors influence quality of life. And interestingly, we look at environmental factors alongside the state of environment and social factors more widely. And environmental factors have remained important alongside economic factors. If we look at the data specifically around the UK, the distance between the environment and the economic factors is actually smaller than at EU level overall. When we talk to people about the perceived impact of environmental issues on economic prosperity, again, this is fairly strong, so 74 for the EU overall and 68% in terms of the UK. So what conclusions would we draw just in terms of looking at overall public opinion more widely? Well, first we would say there's fairly strong values across a broad range of environmental issues in terms of concerns for the general public. And these concerns relate both to quality of life and also in relation to the relationship with the environment. But the story in relation to how attitudes actually influence actions is slightly more complicated. So when we talk to individual citizens about the relationship between responsibility, really, and action more widely, and their belief in whether or not positive environmental action is possible, there are 2 main challenges. One is in relation to the breadth of behaviors that individual citizens believe that they can take. So they don't feel informed enough in terms of the things that they can do. Actually, data from the Eurobarometer shows that the top 3 actions that individual citizens take are around recycling, reducing thermal energy more widely, and also thinking about public transport. And that has stayed fairly consistent. And so there's a point there around thinking about what other actions citizens can take. But perhaps one of the bigger issues is really around responsibility and who the general public believes is responsible for dealing with environmental issues. And actually, there's a huge amount of data that suggests citizens are concerned about how much the individual actions that citizens take will actually have an impact on wider environmental issues more widely. And there's a belief that actually, alongside individual citizen action, of course, governments and corporations need to play a role. And this data comes again from the Eurobarometer, just in terms of asking actually who's not doing enough. So there is a sense that individual citizens are not doing enough, and governments and corporations as well. When we talk to citizens around their preferred policy levers, and this again comes from data specifically on the UK, top of the list is providing more information on environmental issues. And this is slightly odd because in the same data set, over 70% of people say that they feel well informed around environmental issues. I'll come back to this in terms of what good information looks like. Bottom of the list, interestingly, is around introducing or increasing taxation on environmentally damaging activities. What does this look like then in relation to looking at wider policy priorities for the general public? Well, the environment actually loses traction here, so it doesn't make the top 10. This is data again from the Eurobarometer, where the economy, immigration, and unemployment are in the top 3. The UK data shows actually only there's 3% there of importance in terms of being the 11th priority. And actually, if you take out the data from some of the Nordic countries, which are in the 25% range, the vast majority of countries actually show up in that 3% range as well. So what does this mean? Well, I want to show you actually a different set of data which focuses specifically on public opinion in the UK. And in part, what we can see from trend data overall is that a key factor in relation to public opinion overall is their view on the economy and the degree to which there's a sense that the economic outlook is improving. And although the situation is not necessarily getting worse from a public perception point of view, it is stagnating. And when we ask people about whether or not the economic outlook will actually change over the coming year, the suggestion is that it will remain unchanged. When we ask them specifically about the sense in which they're struggling financially, again, this is staying the same rather than improving for most people. And when we ask people about, specifically people who are in employment, to think about their income, again, this is roughly staying the same. And I mention this in part because what we see when we actually go out and speak to people is that the economic concerns that they have, and the concerns specifically at household level, is the key factor that's going to drive their voting preference going forward. And what we need to be doing is figuring out how we can talk about environmental issues, environmental concerns in relation to what happens to finance at household level more widely. I want to show you just an overview of public policy issues over time, again, looking at public opinion. And I apologize for the number of lines on this chart. But just to say that the concern in relation to the health of the economy has stayed as a strong factor in relation to public opinion. The two key areas that have changed over time is the desire to invest in health and concerns over border control. So again, of course, that will be not a surprise to any of you, but perhaps important in relation to how do we think about that in relation to trying to encourage people to think about the environment when they actually go out to vote. So what I want to talk about now is when we actually go and speak to people about their intentions around voting, but also their behaviors more widely in relation to behavioral insight work that we do on behalf of DEC, on behalf of DEFRA, and get underneath really what those overarching values mean in terms of the concerns people have at household level. So those overall concerns really turn into 5 key insights. Concerns over fuel poverty and pressures on household finances continue, and that remains kind of the key driver around public concerns more widely. The concern over flooding and natural disasters, again, which will impact households, is a key concern. Concern over health issues of which environmental factors may be a contributing factor, including things like food safety and trust in issues around health are a key issue. Concerns over infrastructure plans which disrupt local environments, and that has to do both with quality of life, but also with concerns over investment being taken out of other key areas like health, for example. And finally, concerns over investment and risk more widely. So specifically, concerns over investment in globally as opposed to the UK around environmental innovation, but also the desire for testing and regulation in relation to innovation more widely. And this is leading to really an increased issue around trust, both in terms of the trust people have in terms of their individual actions and whether or not that will result in change, but also the trust in relation to how individual action relates to both national and international pledges around environmental issues. And so the quotes here come from qualitative work that we've done as a result of work on the Eurobarometer. I'll just read out one of the quotes here. So things like global environmental engineering initiatives, unfortunately, people tend to view themselves as British rather than citizens of the earth. And if you think about the Kyoto Treaty and stuff that various parties sign to and various parties don't sign into, each probably for their own benefit, it's probably unlikely that global changes will happen. So there's a real challenge then in terms of trying to convince citizens that the initiatives and the policies that are going to be put forward will result in real change, both at household level, but also in terms of the environmental concerns that they have. So what can we think about just in terms of taking that forward around how we may reposition the environment from a general public position? There are three key behavioral insights I think we should consider. The first, of course, is around the household and the pressure on households, meaning that really even the most concerned citizens are beginning to see environmental issues and the way in which they engage those as being premium level of activities. And one of the things we need to do is be able to address some of that. Understanding the benefits of environmental options can be highly complex. And you saw from the earlier data, actually, that citizen concerns are actually fairly broad. And so one of the things that we need to be able to do is make sure the debate doesn't leave the general public behind and it speaks only to those concerned citizens. And that really relates to my last point, really, which is engaging the public. So they're informed is vital. And although the general public tells us they want more information, what's key really in terms of making sure that that leads to both action on an individual level, but also action in relation to how people are going to vote, is ensuring that the information that they receive actually has traction. So we've done a huge amount of work in relation to things like labeling and providing people with information from scientists or technical information. And this is where that behavioral insights agenda, behavior change agenda becomes more and more important. We need to really actually test what information is likely to produce action with the general public more widely. So I want to leave you really with three key considerations in terms of engaging the public. Again, beginning with the household. The general public need to understand what the incentives are in relation to both policy and how that's being articulated in relation to the election, but also in relation to what that will mean for them at household level. This is also true in relation to innovations or ways in which we want the general public to be able to relate to what we want to do around environmental policy. We need to think about the general taxpayer, not just our concerned citizens, and look at both the return to households in terms of incentives, but also in terms of benefits. And finally, environmental issues need to be more embedded, more linked to those top three concerns. So the issues around the economy, around health, and around job creation. And again, this needs to be argued and placed in a way that really focuses on incentives for individuals and for households and returns to the economy and society more widely. Thank you very much.